applause.
Thank you, Jack. So I'll begin now. I've made a selection of poems from the recent Poetry in McGregor Festival. So you may have heard some of them, but perhaps not all. We started something called Poets Corner, and that was like an ad hoc platform. People could just come and read as they wished, but I also created a scaffolding of poems to read in between, should there be no one reading. And I just called them pages. So there were the Italian pages, the Ian McCullum pages, and the Stanzas pages. I'll begin with the Italian pages. This poem is titled simply One, and it's by Veronica Cavedagna, and she wrote it in Italian and translated it herself. The tongue beats against the walls of the empty room. It doesn't roll over the palate. It trips, collapses, is mute. The tongue does not roll, but falls. It slips over the impossible. It cuts itself. Even breath is taken away. The lingual root is amputated. There is no remnant, not even within your own traces, in the parched, thirsty mouth. The second Italian poem is called In Your Deeds, and it's by Cristina da Ponte, originally Italian, and she herself translated it. In your deeds, and then within your hands, a great soul unfolds, turbulent as tempest, utterly sweet as flowers newly bloomed. I left my heart there, perhaps millions of years ago, and I have since carried you in my breast like beauty. I remain within your hands for as long as the world decides not to vanish as dust and untouched skin. It is a little farewell, this blind pain, a vast summoning. Beyond infinity, I will still be there at the center of that beauty, which exists only in the space of meeting. The third Italian poem, Fragrant Terraces, by Marinella Garuti, translated by herself. When I walk up and down the terraces of my spring garden, volatile fragrance floods the air from sea to mountain. I watch and listen. The fynbos, the abundant wildflowers, are brushed by wind and by colors oscillating toward the sun. A sea of swaying restios dances among protea and leucadendron. The songs of birds, a malachite sunbird, a double-collared sunbird in brilliant reds and greens, and then, as in a dream, the amethyst sunbird for a single moment touches on a branch only to disappear. I seem to wake from a fabulous memory, and in that very instant, my beloved ones all enter my thoughts. The fourth Italian poem, My Green is Made of You, by Martino Noce. Crystal clear, you pour through me like water. You are the spirit that quenches my thirst. I thirst so for this love. It matters not that cold prevails. It is time to grow up. Inside me, I sense all colors, but green is the one that blooms. Its blue content, like volcanic lakes, mirrors of the souls of eagles. I saw them looking through me once when I flew above the Andes. It's yellow, like a warm nest where your dreams are born, the soft woven straw with its perfume that I seek again and again. I gathered both these, blue and yellow, from you. I close my eyes and blend them deep in the dark, wet soil. One seed within 2 leaves, one sun, one flower will arise. May I just do a sound check? Am I coming across loud enough?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly.
Yes, thank you. We can hear you. Thank you, Patricia.
So I'll now move on to the Ian McCallum pages. There are 2 poems from him. One is called Junction. It's a short one. I was on my own near a wild water hole. Animals were coming down to drink. Birds chorused. The trees at the water's edge stood in quiet elegance. I wondered how many stories they could tell about that wild junction. The second poem by Ian McCallum is titled The Graveyard Pond at Kosovo. In a darkened corner of a city, the hard, informal surface of a hungry settlement shapes a poisoned path of water to the wetland pond at Kosovo, a graveyard. Memories of a once natural stream lie buried beneath the dreams of unnamed sons and daughters, too many and too young to have died unnaturally. Suffocated by uncollected waste, drains rise waist deep in a foul, weekly overflow into the streets under doors, seeping mattresses, bedding, skins, and floors. When essential services fail and drains clog, the council blames the dogs. Today, there will be no waste collection. School will be out of the question. Instead, the clinic will overflow and another young dream will go to the wasteland pond at Kosovo. The council will blame the dogs. And now I move on to the stanzas pages. I'm sure you all know the little stanzas journal put together by Douglas Reed Skinner. So I've drawn these from the ones following number 20, 21, 22, and 23. The first one is by Zoe Boshoff and it's called Gardening by Moonlight. I learned to love beauty from my bedroom window. The moon smiled at me from over the dark mountain, illuminating the garden. My love for you runs through the garden, inside me, hidden, fragrant, blossoming with artichokes and watermelons in other people's homes. You mined beauty from the rocky places inside that you retreated to. Your beauty is private, angry, fertile. You took the name of the moon into your own. It was not given to you. A blood alliance with its midnight light to see yourself by. I want to put my hand there, where your heart meets the moon. I want to plant seeds in all the places her light touches in us. This is by Margaret Clough, Parallel Universe. My daughter, Dot, was married 3 times, divorced twice, widowed once. Sometimes she stayed at home with us, though mostly she lived in a succession of furnished rooms in coastal towns with one man or another. Men fell in love with her big brown eyes, her full red lips, her husky voice. She would sit on a sofa smoking roll-ups, dropping ash on the carpet, laughing at the voices in her head. But they're not funny, they're really quite horrid, she said. My daughter used to write letters full of good advice to cabinet ministers, to the US president, and to Fidel Castro. She wrote to the International Court at The Hague, complaining of violation of human rights that had never happened. Sometimes she received replies. This is by Jane Fox, and it's titled The Sudden Shiver of Winter Branches. In these cloistered, lockdown days, I am like an old, slow animal, thoughts rising to the surface in their own time. Time itself doesn't matter. This moment when the pen touches the page has no measure of seconds or hours. There is comfort in this continuous, gentle scratching, these black marks growing on white paper. In the stillness before dawn, I hear the wood stove whispering, the dog turning in its bed. I hear the blood singing in the pathways of my head. I hear the uncertain future in the sudden shiver of winter branches. It's a pity to move on so one to the other, because I think each one needs like a few minutes, 10 minutes to draw them all in and absorb them. This is by Eustacia Girivenga, and it's called Joburg CBD. The heat is blazing. Tall buildings reach out to the sky. The oil bubbles. Fat cakes and mince for breakfast, French fries and polony for brunch. Hairdressers arrive, display dolls lose their hair, barbers arrive, the wind blows the hair down the street. Farmers arrive, it's roast mealies for tea. Butchers arrive, scop for supper. Vendors arrive, taxis hoot, touts scream. A skyscraper burns, firemen fall, smoke rises into the sky, clouds form, wallets disappear, the smooth boys vanish, the rain falls, black water flows into the drains, the fat rats drown. This is by Kwenzakwe Nkosi Mchali, and it's called Our Summer Days. Top kitchen door open on a summer's day. Mpile hanging over the bottom kitchen door with a biscuit. I want some, I'd say. Go buy some yourself, she'd say, and throw me her last cent while I'm hanging the rest of my washing on the garden fence. Extension cord patched with plastic crawls beneath the bush, under the tree, the radio over an upside down bucket with its handle sunken in the bush. Top kitchen door open on a summer's day. White butterflies over our outdoor toilet. We only see them on summer days. Moving with our 4-room house's shade, all day with ice cubes, squash juice, and warm Coca-Cola, endless laughter, one cell phone on loudspeaker, talking all at once to that poor caller, happy like the sun is not going to set, up and down all day. Mpile never sat. Our summer days were top doors open in our kitchens, bottom doors locked to keep out the chickens. So those latter ones were from Stanzas. And this one now I'm going to read is by Hugh Hodge. And it's a section from a work that he wrote called Fit for Purpose. A superstitious day, the last storm still battering up the coast. A cormorant silhouettes the line of surf, an arrow to the heart. Out in the bay, the great ships heave and sinew, chained by a bull-ringed capstan. The sea swells from the northwest, catching the port quarter to roll awkwardly, twisting and plunging her head into the backing southerly, and the crew waits, pilot and tugs to lead her in to the still waters of the basin. This is the pen's imagination. Each word, an arrow uncertain of its meaning, peers from the page, a frightened lamb born on a cold night in the desert air. Barbed wire rusts in the mist, drying in the wind, spider webs jeweled in dew diamonds like photographs. Friday then, fish and faith, the fishermen and the fishers of men. The sea, its fathoms and cables, parallel rule, dividers, compass, rose, the binnacle of brass, the lifting deck, the ease and happiness of the soul, found once again in the loneliness. So we recently held an event called Poetry in McGregor at Woodlands Eatery. And its theme was masks and portraiture. And these we also read at the festival again. This one is called We Wear the Mask. And it's by someone called Paul Lawrence Dunbar, whose years of life were 1872 to 1906. But it's very appropriate for today. We wear the mask. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes, this debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but, O great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but, oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. This is by Mike Alford, and it's called This Woman. This woman buys me lunch. Her face is corrugated and her hair color is well camouflaged. She has manned the trenches for a long while. Love and birth, love and illness, financial misadventure and death, a little too much perhaps. And here she is, calm, wise, soft-spoken, glad to be alive, glad to have lived. She's here from London. Back here in her birthplace, my dearest sister, rifling through the memories, so glad to be together. She tells me at the end of the meal, this 80-year-old, stay alive until I come again. This is by Kerry Hammerton, and it's called 1 Minute Lover. A blue arm encircles me. I feel the kiss of his shirt against my hand, thigh pressed against mine. I strain forward. I long to lean back, feel his chest, be absorbed by his heat, hair gasps, hair entangled, his breath warm on my neck. The train lurches and stops. He is gone. This is by Anthony Osler, and it's called My Grandmother. What I remember about my grandmother is the morning that she went to hospital for the last time. Her wheelchair was standing beside the ambulance that my grandfather had ordered on the telephone, and she sat there like a small, crooked bird, while all the women who lived on the farm, and in those days there were many, covered their heads and wailed. Then the chair was lifted up and the door swallowed her, her face hidden in her winged hands. As the ambulance drove off, the women ran behind it with their hands in the air, while I stood behind the corner of the house, breathless with terror. My grandfather walked off by himself to the stables, and I never saw my grandmother again. The storm passes. Above the house, the sky bursts into flower. This is by a Zimbabwean poet, Takawira Dururu. It's called Schoolgirl in a Taxi. The taxi is full. She squeezes in and sits on the hump behind the driver's seat, resplendent in her maroon school uniform, still like a monk in meditation, with bag clutched in one hand and chin resting on the other, her innocent, childish face shining brightly in the early sun rays, brown eyes staring naively aside, face powder lightening the dark skin, colorful lip glow painting the silent lips. Nothing betrays the hidden thoughts. Hauntingly, the head resembles an upturned African clay pot, hidden under a fine coating of neatly combed short black hair, resting delicately on a thin neck. Far from the eye's range, the heart can see a line or two from Macbeth, maybe. The Pythagoras theorem cannot give a face that glimmer. Only the thoughts of a secret boyfriend can. This is by Jane D'Souza and it's called Traffic Light Insight. He is here every day, tall and dark and lean, Bob Marley hair swaying as he strides between corners. Being a good Buddhist, I practice generosity, dig for coins when he holds his hand out. He often has a cigarette clasped between forefinger and thumb, sucking in the smoke with squinting eyes, unfurling as he exhales in long streams. Being an average Buddhist, I struggle with non-judgment. I resent my daily offerings being used to buy his fix. Stopping one day, I offer words in place of loose change. You smoke too much, I say. You think too much, he instantly replies. This is called Dust, and it was written by my daughter when she was in Italy in 2010. Dust. My daughter's Romani Pinnock. She sits down next to me, heavy and filling the seat of this European train, but she wears colors that are too bright for this place. She is dark, murky coffee, hair pulled straight, lips strongly painted. I find myself leaning closer towards her, inhaling her being, the smells of my home, of dust, mixed with dried fish, mixed with warm skin, mixed with movement. I am breathing it all in because she has brought my home to me. There are tears in my eyes as I move close to her, to dust, to earth. The train rocks her skin against mine. Her animated gestures touch me as she laughs and talks. To me, she is singing as she unconsciously fondles the canvas strap of my bag. I am breathing her, feeling her. I want to be held by her, engulfed by her pungent embrace. I want to thank her for showing me home, for reminding my soul what I am. But she is gone, and I am left to squeeze this canvas strap and lean deeper into the space that was her, that is me. Such interesting similarities between that poem and Kerry Hamilton's of a perfect stranger giving something. This is by Pam Newham, blue-eyed boy. He walked the world as if he owned it, cigarette between thumb and forefinger, its red glow stabbed you like a laser. He wore a scuffed bomber jacket he said belonged to his grandfather. Hunched over his computer, he bashed the keys as if it were an old typewriter and wrote about scoring girls and coke in other places. Once, he took Miriam Makeba to lunch and they got so drunk he forgot to take notes. He boasted about his damaged soul. When he spoke, men laughed at his jokes, and women could not look away. This is by Siyabonga Sibia. It's called Mashia, and I had the privilege of hearing him read it in Zulu and in his English translation at one of Hugh Hodges' open mics at Off the Wall in Observatory. Mashia. There you reside in my deepest dreams. Across the river, in the land of those departed, I see you. On opposite sides of the river we stand, staring at each other. I have longed to see your face again, your blackness, your rich brown soil-like skin. I have wanted you for so long to be here and be proud of the man I have become. In my deepest of dreams, I hear your voice, an unforgettable Nat King Cole song playing to some of the memories I possess of you. In my deepest of dreams, if only I could wake up and you were here again. This is now by Tatumkulu Africa, and it's called The Bell. That's my dog groaning in the background, sorry. The bell. Sometimes I hear a bell ringing far off in a somewhere I have never been. So many hills between, no rails to take you there, no roads, and I, too old now to stumble through so much of winter's weeds and its grown cold stones. Why should a bell be ringing there? Who swings it, and for whom in this lean hour, stalled between night's spent tide and dawn? Do only I and owls, flaming-eyed in knotted boughs, hear its thin summoning that yet to us is loud as a nail's tapping on a pane, a prey or predators slinking through the leaves? Or are the faceless, homeless ones rushing now to where the bell calls, bursting from the overhangs, gullies and holes like hares and moles, with lamentations loud as that of the groaning sea? Or is it a celebration then, a dancing on the hills for some bright yielding of the years, some midnight revelation bared to only the blind and owls? Sometimes I hear a bell ringing far off in a nowhere I have never been, can never be, child in me lost among the hills, wandering in crying rounds, wrestling with my chains. This is by Walter Delamere, and it's called The Listeners. Is there anybody there? Said the traveler, knocking on the moonlit door, and his horse in the silence tramped the grasses of the forest's ferny floor. And a bird flew up out of the turret above the traveler's head, and he smote upon the door again a second time. Is there anybody there? He said. But no one descended to the traveler. No head from the leaf-fringed sill leaned over and looked into his grey eyes, where he stood, perplexed and still, but only a host of phantom listeners that dwelt in the lone house then stood listening in the quiet of the moonlight to that voice from the world of men, stood thronging the faint moonbeams on the dark stair that goes down to the empty hall, hearkening in an air stirred and shaken by the lonely traveller's call. And he felt in his heart their strangeness, their stillness answering his cry, while his horse moved, cropping the dark turf neath the starred and leafy sky. For he suddenly smote on the door even louder and lifted his head. Tell them I came and no one answered, that I kept my word, he said. Never the least stir made the listeners, though every word he spake fell echoing through the shadows of the still house from the one man left awake. Aye, they heard his foot upon the stirrup and the sound of iron on stone, and how the silence surged softly backward when the plunging hoofs were gone. And I'll now read one that I wrote. It's called I Saw a Horseman. I saw a horseman once come riding by across the beach at night when moon had set and stars, so many, splattered far across from edge to edge of sky, reflecting in the tide which moved its way up towards my feet and back again. I called, "Why ride you here, alone and at this hour? And why wear a cloak of silk? And what for that silver sword that hangs against your side? And whither goest thou?" Guardian of light, I saw he was a lonely traveller, lonely as a lighthouse on a naked coast, bearer of small light through all our histories dark, though none as dark as this time now. Once I saw a horseman riding by, through histories black with death and war, through meanness and the many blows of hate. And as I stood beside the washed up kelp and driftwood, he showed me light as never had I seen before, then bade me well and carried on his ride of loneliness and lightening of the dark. And now I'm going to conclude with Ithaca by C.P. Kafafi. This poem seems to have become a signature of this year's Poetry McGregor Festival. I've read it on numerous occasions. It was the favorite poem of Michael Pettit, who was an important, what can we call him, staff of the festival. Though not a poet himself, he lived very passionately and poetically. I think this poem also has such resonance now for this time, strange time that we live in, where people are thinking very deeply about life and the whole journey of life. So this is Ithaca by C.P. Kafafi. As you set out on your journey for Ithaca, just hope that your road is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. Don't be afraid of the Lastrygonians, nor of Cyclops, nor even of angry Poseidon, because you will never find such things on your way as long as you keep your thoughts raised high, as long as a rare excitement stirs your spirit and your body. No, you won't encounter Lastrygonians, Cyclops, nor even wild Poseidon, unless you bring them along inside your soul, unless your soul sets them up in front of you. Just hope that your road is a long one. May there be many summer mornings when, with great pleasure, great joy, you enter harbors that you're seeing for the first time. May you stop at Phoenician trading stations to buy fine things, mother of pearl and coral, amber and ebony, sensual perfume of every kind, as many sensual perfumes as you can. And may you visit many Egyptian cities to learn and go on learning from their scholars. Keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you are destined for, but don't hurry the journey at all. It is better if your journey lasts for years, so that you're old by the time you reach the island, wealthy with all that you have gained on the way, without expecting Ithaca to make you rich. Ithaca gave you the marvelous journey. Without her, you wouldn't have set out. She has nothing left to give you now. And if you find Ithaca poor, she won't have fooled you. You will have become wise and full of experience. You will have come to understand by then what all these Ithacas of your life mean. Thank you.
Patricia, thank you so much for reading to us. Can we have a hand of applause before I say anything? Beautiful. Thank you. That was an astonishing reading, Patricia. You know, I kept looking for sort of a pattern or a system by which you'd chosen these poems, and I never found one. And I loved that. I loved it that they were like strangers on a train together or in a room together, and by the end of the journey, we knew them all and they knew each other.
And they all touched. You could feel the poet doing some deep personal exploration as well. I found everything there: loneliness, reflection, and that journey, that extraordinary journey.
Yes, and more life. Even when you feel the presence of the dead ones, the departed ones. You know, there's always more life.
Yes.
Do we have any questions in the room? Melissa, do you see any hands?
No hands yet, but if anyone does want to ask Patricia something, please do raise your hand or let us know. Jacques, your hand is the only one up, so please kick us off with questions.
So I've got a question about, I was very moved, and I'll have to think why I was so moved by the listener.
Yes.
I do love it, and it's the way I've heard you read it before, and you read it beautifully. But I want to ask something about the horseman that you saw. For me, it felt as if that horseman felt very close for me to what your poetry does, the kind of witnessing that you do in your poems. Is that something you'd like to say something about, the relationship between that horseman and poetry, and specifically the poetry that you write?
So what this time of COVID has empowered me to do is to tell it like it is, about my own way of living, if you know what I mean, how I live my life. And normally I live very privately. My poetry and my novels reveal the things that I struggle with. But I think if I reached my Ithaca and I was asked what was your life's purpose, I would have to say I sought light. I was a seeker of light in the face of all the darkness. And that poem, I Saw Horseman, it's quite an old poem. And I don't want to say it was a vision, but it was a very profound feeling that, and I hope I don't sound like an aging hippie now, forgive me.
You're allowed to. There are many of us here.
But yeah, it's this quest for light, and that there are certain among us who are light bearers, and we don't often see them. We're not often aware of people working for light. And I just had this experience with this sense of a horseman moving from lighthouse to lighthouse, bearing light, and that lonely journey, a journey only to bear light, not to hold light for himself or herself, but to gather and dispense and ensure that light persisted in our very dark times of war and disquiet and now pestilence.
And that horseman rides into the dark, back into the dark, like the
yeah.
man and the listener.
Yeah. Yes, like the listeners. It's the same sort of imagery.
And you never know what the deal was with the listener, what he was.
No.
His word was just that he came, he arrived.
It kept true to his word.
Yes. I don't want to take up all the time, but I do have a request that you read your response to Cato about what
okay,
you.
so I'll have to look at it's on my other screen. So I'll look at it. Shall I do that now?
If you'd like, it would be lovely.
So the question posed by Cato, what did you do for the greater good? And greater and good with capital G. So what did you give? I hear that as against the darkness, you know? And this is my reply. And it's my reply because it's all I know to do. I'm not a politician. I'm not an academic. I don't, the tools I have are these, which I will express now. Replying to Cato, the question, what did you do in your life for the greater good? My answer, I collected poems, distilled their essence, filled a chalice with that distillation, handed this out with bread and nectar, read poems to strangers and to the sea and to the white foam on the sea, made books and safeguarded light.
It's a great poem. It's a lovely poem. Thank you for reading it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Barbara, you're welcome to ask.
Yes,
Oh,
thank
so
you.
you're waving.
Hi, Patricia. How wonderful to hear you reading. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I was so moved to hear Ithaca again, and particularly because I am old enough to have my toe almost on land. And what a journey it is if you keep to doing what you know you must do.
Yeah.
And at this age, at this grand old age, a few things have sort of suddenly come together for me. I really get this poem completely. And thank you so much for reading it. Thanks.
Jeff, I know you were unmuted. I don't know if it's because you wanted to ask something, or if anyone else has to ask a question, please do hop on and let me know. There we go. Ed, you are welcome to ask.
Hey, Melissa, thank you. Thank you, Patricia. Really enjoyed that. I had the thought, given all your years of curating anthologies and just generally making space for other people's work and dealing a lot with other people's work, would you say that that's nudged your writing into unexpected territory, different areas that you hadn't considered before? Maybe what comes to mind is also your found poems, or the notion of found poems. I'm just running with this. I don't know if there's any resonance for you with the question.
So it's a question, am I inspired by the works that are, by the poems that I work with? Yes,
Well-
I am very much inspired. I'm very excited by South African poetry. I think there's amazing material being produced, amazing material coming from deep place, deep observation. And certainly now in this time where people are really looking deep into themselves because we've got no real answers about what's going on, I find the poems that are being sent to me in the way I can say to you, if I reach my Ithaca and am asked what will it be, it'll be bearing, I've sought light. People are doing the same to me. They're sending me in poems that are also like they're not wasting time now. There seems to be a sense there's no time wasting. Like let's get on with the real poetry, the real stuff of my soul, my deepest creativity. And with confidence and with pride to do it. And that's what I find, I'm enriched by that myself. That I'm feeling, I don't think I'm wrong. I think that even the festival in McGregor enhanced it again. People, there was such a togetherness of sharing the poems and sharing the inspiration and acknowledging each other, which in the past wasn't always there, that acknowledgement of other poets. Everyone's, one would occasionally get the sense everyone was on their own trajectory, but now in these past 2-3 years, there's such bonding. Can I use that silly word? Like the poets coming together and the basket of poetry really filling in this country, which is exciting and very inspiring. I'm very inspired by it. Did I answer correctly there?
There was no correct answer. I just wanted to... Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Annette.
Jeff, I see a hand up.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much, Patricia, for that reading. You were talking about the perhaps the ways in which your life as a lover of poetry eluded certain pitfalls. And I think one pitfall of people who are academically inclined is to be obsessed with some sort of canon, whether it's an international canon or a South African canon or whatever the case may be. And I found your selection to be delightful partly for the reason that it followed your own interests, your own way. It wasn't driven by any particular orthodoxy or anti-orthodoxy or whatever. And thank you very much.
If anyone would like a PDF of this compilation, I'm happy to send it.
Thank you. Do you want people to email you to get that, or do you want to email?
Yes, if they just email me, so I've got the return address, and just make the subject red wheelbarrow reading, and then the emails won't get lost. Red wheelbarrow reading and the date, and then I'll send it. So it's a PDF. It might be interesting to look at the poems in text in case certain things weren't clear as I read them.
That would be awesome, I'm sure. Anybody else who'd like to ask something before we round off this session? Last call. Doesn't look like it. Okay, stop the recording then.